Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman. I'll be your host for the next hour, along with my producer and co-host Jeff Johnson here at the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Today is March 27th, year of our Lord 2019. We've got a lot of great stuff today. I'm going to start with an article that my good friend Andrew, our loyal listener, posted today with his commentary. We're going to really talk about federalism again, overreach of government. We're going to kind of review the Democrat Party platform of 2020. Apparently, there's a lot of room in the clown car at the circus, so we're going to touch on those. We're going to review a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruling about the Kate Steinle case in San Francisco. Her parents had sued the city for the policies of the sheriff, resulting in her death by somebody here illegally. Donald Trump signed an executive order to protect us from EMP, and we're going to discuss EMPs as well as how we can protect ourselves. Unless you want to completely rely on the government, completely your choice. You can follow us on Facebook. Cerberus Radio Network is our page. We have a fan page, CRN. We love that people are joining there and weighing in with their commentary, sharing our posts. Jeff, I tried to, when I was putting one of the links to the show on my timeline, since I still have 3 more days before I'm allowed to do so on my own, I accidentally hit the boost button and this big red pop-up came up telling me I had to review their policy for advertising and against discrimination. Needless to say, I backed out of there. I refused to even open that window because we know what discrimination means. Anything for traditional values will be counted as discrimination. I think they'll still take your money. They just won't boost it like they say they're going to. So we've got a lot of great stuff to go over. Again, we have a SoundCloud page. So if you cannot listen live, go there. Please follow us on there. You will get updates as to when we have shows. It's not always in the morning. As I said, this weekend, Jeff and I recorded another episode of Fundamentals of Federalism with all the talk of banning the AR-15s. We recorded my article that was published by the 10th Amendment Center, AR-15, weapons of war or enemies of tyranny. So if you're the kind of person that would rather just listen to something in the background and don't have time to read an article, you can just go ahead and listen to that. Also, this is going to be relevant to our discussion today. I encourage you to reread The Constitutional Solution to Immigration, also published by the 10th Amendment Center. You can also find, it's kind of difficult to do query and find these articles. So what I did was I got them all on my website, SuzanneCSherman.com. Go to Suzanne's articles. My articles published by the 10th Amendment Center, the American Conservative, and the Abbeville Institute are all there. If you go under the blogs heading, I have a few blogs up and running. I try to keep those focused on preparedness. The article by the 10th Amendment Center that came out this week on federalism getting the finger, this was where the Supreme Court has decreed that across continental landmass cops must suck it up if we, the people, give them the middle finger. Now, you might think that's a great ruling. However, it is flipping the bird to the system of federalism. This was never a topic within the purview of the general government to regulate, let alone rule upon. I want to welcome those of you that are listening live on YouTube and participating in our live chat. You can go there, follow the YouTube link that we have posted up on the webpage, on my page as well, and weigh in. Send me messages on Facebook during the show, and I will acknowledge those, and your opinions and questions, comments, concerns will be addressed. Any complaints, I'll direct directly to Mr. Johnson, the producer here. So that being said, I did a little bit of a quick change as to where I'm going to open the show today. Our good friend and loyal listener, Andrew, posted an article about, and what was more impressive than the Fox article was Andrew's commentary. And this is about the 15 far out ideas from the 2020 Democrat field. It's actually a Fox article, but Andrew posted it. And here's his commentary. And I wholeheartedly concur. Suzanne C. Sherman approves this message. Here we go. We are lurching inexorably away from the true function of government, which is safeguarding your natural rights. We are lurching toward violating your natural rights to enforce an egocrat's vision of equality. This is going to happen. The floodgates are open. The demographics favor tyranny over liberty. It is a done deal. It's when, not if. This is why I talk about preparedness. So today we're going to talk about these policies that often come to fruition with the complicity of the Republican Party. So again, I'm not going to waste anybody's time and moan about the Democrats because we're just as much to fault under a Republican White House, Senate. We started also with a House. It has never been more difficult to purchase a firearm. So we can think, and we've never had more of a bigger debt and bigger budget. So, we could go on and on. As I mentioned yesterday, I forgot how much money, but we are actually subsidizing the people in Europe for their energy bills so they can be less reliant on Russia. Your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen. Let's start and look at some of these policies. A lot of them have gotten a lot of coverage in the media. As we know, yesterday, Che Guevara's new Green Deal went before a vote before the United States Senate. I will have to say, I thought this was ingenious of Mitch McConnell to put this on a vote and get the senators on the record before the elections as whether or not they support this. How many came out in support? Zero, nada, zilch, zip. Not a single one. In fact, 3 voted with the Republicans. So we had 57-0. All the other cowards failed to support the new Democrat darling. They voted present. How heroic. And we've been talking about what they are going to do to win. Forget about the Mueller investigation and the victory laps the Republicans are doing over it. These guys are licking their wounds and preparing for the next fight while we all celebrate and gloat. So here's what they're going to do. And this article reflects exactly what I've been warning you about before. So let's see. We have court packing. FDR tried to do this, remember, because the court was initially doing its job by ruling as unconstitutional his New Deal policies as he threatened to pack the court. It was the switch in time save 9. They all of a sudden became the rubber stamp agency for his communist policies that extended the New Deal. So let's see, court packing, reparations for slavery, and abolishing the Electoral College. That is the one we've been talking about, and we're going to continue that and spend more time on another show. But exactly by the Electoral College alone, the states are slitting their own throats. They are going the way that the states, back when they had thinking people calling the shots in them, rejected outright. There was never going to be complete and total domination by the general government over the states. Forget the Supreme Court. The states were the ones intended to be the ultimate vanguard of the limitations of the general government. And here they are doing the exact opposite by capitulating and saying, we are going to put our delegates, our electoral votes to whomever wins the national election, popular vote. If enough of them do this, we will never, ever, ever have anybody even remotely, in fact, we don't even have it now, resembling a conservative president. But this is precisely why the initial role of the president, as described, his responsibilities put forth in Article 2 were so limited. The legislative branch was the voice of the people, not the president. And here's something you and I came across, Jeff, too, in our discussions. The fact that Article 2 sets forth his power to suggest policies to, that's annoying and I don't know how to stop it. Sorry, it was an Amazon notification. He has the power to suggest policies to Congress in a State of the Union address. That has become, it has evolved, or should we say devolved, into an or the elected monarchy Alexander Hamilton wanted. Only difference being it's not a lifetime appointment. So let's see what we have here. Throw out the Electoral College, pack the Supreme Court, reparations for slavery, the Green New Deal. That did not go over well yesterday. Apparently, nobody wants to back her up. Medicare for all. Jeff, can you please find health care under Article 1, Section 8, or maybe general welfare takes care of that? Lower the voting age. So we're going to increase the number of voters who will vote Democrat, but we're going to at the same time raise the age they would like to nationally for those who can purchase firearms. Nationally, you must be 21 to purchase the sidearm. Article 1, Section 8. There is no constitutional authority for the general government to regulate firearms, period. This is reiterated under the Second Amendment. Suspend the death penalty. If the general government wishes to suspend it, that's entirely up to them. Remember, the Fifth Amendment says life, liberty, or property may not be taken without due process. Eliminate the filibuster. So yes, but again, to have a national abolition against the death penalty, no, not constitutional. Eliminate the filibuster. Social Security for illegal immigrants. I thought they were already getting it. A wealth tax. You got to love this one. 2% wealth tax on Americans with more than 50 million in assets. 3% on those worth more than 1 billion. The call for a wealth tax, apart from a tax on income, marks a shift in policy for Democrats, although it is in line with Elizabeth Warren's rhetoric. It would make the ultra-rich pay their fair share and generate nearly $3 trillion over the next 10 years. A lot of rich and powerful people won't like it, but I won't work for them, she said. Beta male O'Rourke last week voted support for her idea. What a ticket that would be. 7-day limit to opioids. So now the general government is under the impression that, this is the thing for me. They don't want to interfere in the doctor-patient relationship when it comes to murdering the unborn up till the date of birth. But we're going to combat the nation's opioid crisis. Gillibrand tweeted, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, that she has introduced legislation to limit opioid prescriptions to 7 days. If we want to end this opioid epidemic, we must work to address the root cause of abuse. Well, let's see. What national agency said that opioids were just fine to prescribe to the American citizens? So once again, they've created a problem and the solution is more of their involvement. But back up the truck. Don't think for a nanosecond the government's going to interfere in the doctor-patient relationship again when it comes to abortion. I submit to you that the American Holocaust has resulted in the deaths of way more souls, way more individuals than has opioids. Unionized campaigns. That just makes me feel like I want to wash after reading that. Let's see. Candidates embrace for a higher minimum wage, health care for all, and other pro-worker policies. They have faced scrutiny about their own treatment. This happened actually in Obama in his administration towards their own campaigns, but now are embracing the unionization of their staffs. Who cares? Tear down the border wall. Don't you see a Democrat president now? We're going to spend a ton of money building a wall. Democrat president's going to tear it down. Beto says he would take the wall down. So again, I've told you my feelings about the wall. Abolish ICE. The push to abolish the Immigration and Customs Enforcement has been cooking in Democratic circles since last year when the Trump administration implemented a zero-tolerance policy on prosecuting for illegal border crossers. Let's see, universal basic income. This harkens back to a right to a right to wages, right to recreation, New Deal policy. They are just going hard left. So long shot presidential Andrew Yang is running on the platform of universal basic income would guarantee $1,000 a month to all citizens, no questions asked. Well, hell, sign me up. We'll get some radio equipment, Jeff, to provide for Americans looking for a job, going back to school, or taking care of loved ones. You think this is national? This is also going on. I had a telephone survey out here from Utah. It was about caregivers. And do you think caregivers should get support? And it was phrased in generic terms. So if you answered these questions, yes. So if you're caring for a sick family member and you say, yes, they should get support. Yes, they should have help. Yes, going down. Yes, 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 yes. What they don't ask you is whose role is it to provide this support? Well, I said, I can't answer these questions the way you're framing them because I see what you're trying to do here. Every time I answer yes, you are going to assume that it is the responsibility of the taxpayers through legislation from the government of the state of Utah to provide this support. The support must come from the families, local charities, and the community. So this is the problem, folks. It's always assumed that it is the government's role to provide this. I think it's Stockton, California that is also promising and going through an experiment about that. We just had a promotion out here in Utah where the public transportation was tooting their horn about the increase in ridership now that the shuttles are free. And I responded to them, free doesn't mean what I think you think it does. Any commentary, Jeff? I'll take a quick break here. I'll take a quick couple breaths, as Junk Bond always says. Suzanne, are you going to breathe yet?
Oh, goodness. There's so much there. I don't even know where to begin with all that. There's nothing there that isn't going to cost a lot of money that they, number one, don't have. They're already $22 trillion in debt. This is all going to cost more. So I've seen even some of the most liberal people saying this is going to cost like $40 trillion. So where are they going to come up with this money? Again, it's not there. They're going to do a lot of this anyway. I mean, they may not pass the whole thing, but they're going to whittle away. The Marxists are winning. And, here was what I knew there was something I wanted to talk about because it just popped into my mind. You said something about the conservatives. What are conservatives? I mean, what are they conserving today? I saw an article earlier this morning about like 70% of Republicans support some sort of socialist program, and I can't remember what it is now. And so they're conserving their brand of socialism. That's what conservatives are today. For the vast majority of them are conserving their Marxist programs, just as long as there's an R after it. They're perfectly good with it.
Well, didn't Donald Trump, I think it was yesterday, proclaim that the Republicans will be known as the party of healthcare?
Oh, I must have missed that. I didn't see that one.
This has been floating around. I've been seeing this, that he said we will be known as the party of healthcare. And then my response to that, I think he tweeted something about that. We will be the party of healthcare. And I said, that's pretty cool. The party that went to war to collect a tax is now going to be the party of healthcare. So don't think that Republicanism, when we talk about big R, is in any way conservative or limited government. It has grown exponentially under Republican leadership. Rand Paul did have some commentary with regards to the New Deal after the voting against cloture on Senate Judiciary Resolution 8, which calls for the United States government to institute a Green New Deal. Again, I am no fan of Mitch McConnell, but I think this was brilliant to have him get this vote out there on the committee, on the floor there. Here's what he says, Rand Paul: the Green New Deal represents an industry-killing, all-out assault on our way of life in Kentucky, an escalation of the war on coal, an attack on our automobile manufacturers and job creators, and even more bureaucracy for our farmers to navigate. I cannot support this anti-Kentucky boondoggle that will make our nation's $22 trillion debt look like the good old days and roll back and roll back the ground we have gained on cutting taxes and removing unnecessary regulations. I look forward to continuing to work with President Trump to ensure we will never become a socialist country. Psst.
Too late.
Rand, we already are. You know, we just love to say we're not, but we are. Try purchasing gas without putting money into the federal coffer. Every state in this union has compulsory education. You cannot make decisions about what you want to do with your own children without fearing the wrath of CPS. I could go on and on. Name one thing government does not control. These are great talking points. Everybody cheered when Donald Trump said, America will never be a socialist nation. Bull crap. We are one already.
Suzanne?
Yeah.
I'll just say this to all you people out there that think we aren't socialists. Read the 10 pillars of communism from the Communist Manifesto. We have all 10. Read, I mentioned yesterday, the 45 goals of communism, which was put into the congressional record in January of 1963. Read those 45 goals, and you will see that they're implementing every one of them. We are socialists. And Nikita Khrushchev was correct. They destroyed us from within, and they did.
And you know, he gets these zingers out that riles everybody up and gets them chanting and cheering. Remember a couple of years ago, we as Americans worship God, not government. Well, that prompted me to write my article, The 10th Amendment, published, The Church of the National Government. I don't know if we did a Fundamentals of Federalism on that one, Jeff. That should be next up if we haven't done it already. But again, yes, we do worship government. Government comes before. Let me ask you this. How many Catholic representatives have sold their souls, Catholics, Christians, evangelicals alike, because they refuse to stand up and fight against abortion? They are putting the preservation of their power so they can hold office ahead of God. Tell me we worship God and not government.
Look at all the Greek-style temples in Washington, D.C.
Yep. So let's see. We're going to blame the Democrats for everything wrong. Our budgets, we've never had bigger deficits. Bump stocks have been banned. Happy Bump Stock Day. That one came down yesterday. Bipartisanship support for extreme risk protection orders. We do not know what the standards will be. I imagine they will be somewhat like Facebook and Twitter's community standards. They're going to be ever changing for whom they will allow to have a firearm and whom they will take them from. Let's see. No substantial withdrawal of U.S. troops around the world. When Trump did announce a withdrawal from Syria, it wasn't because it was the morally and constitutionally correct thing to do, but it was because we defeated ISIS. So all we need is another flare-up or fake gas attack from Assad, and boom, back we are again. People of Yemen have no comment at this point. So we covered Rand Paul's commentary about that. Let's go to a little bit of commentary by our friend Ryan McMakin from Mises Wire, who's been on the show. And then I'm going to get into this Ninth Circuit ruling in a little bit. Climate change activists even admit being green requires the end of capitalism. Well, there you have it. At least now they're being honest about it, he opens his article. Again, this is on Mises Wire. I love Mises. Headline this week in The Guardian reads, Ending climate change requires the end of capitalism. Have we got the stomach for it? You know what? Bring it. Let's have the collapse. I am so ready. That was an article by Phil McDuff that he's referring to, and it goes on to discuss the Green New Deal currently being peddled in the U.S. Congress. Again, we had the vote yesterday. Ain't got support for that one. Zero zip, not a zilch. Declares a radical turn towards socialism is really the heart of saving the planet from climate change. The radical economics isn't a hidden clause, but a headline feature. Now, I submit to you, remember when the Affordable Care Act once seemed so ludicrous it would never pass? Who saved its sorry little butt? A Republican appointed conservative, black robed messiah, judicial temple monkey Roberts. The radical economics isn't a hidden clause, but a headline feature. Climate change is a result of our current economic and industrial system. Proposals, Green New Deal proposals, marry sweeping environmental policy changes with broader socialist reforms because the level of disruption required to keep us at temperature anywhere below absolutely catastrophic is fundamentally on a deep structural level incompatible with the status quo. Now, don't think that they have not been planning this for some time. What do I always go back to when I get to this point? The American Community Survey. You must answer under threat of federal law very intrusive questions about how you live, including how you heat your house, how many toilets you have you grown vegetables, can you dress yourself? Very significant focus on how you operate your home and stay warm. Specifically ask you, what type of fuels do you use? Do you own a wood stove? Wouldn't it be convenient now if wood stoves are banned like they are in California? You cannot burn wood in California if you have an alternative means to heat your home. So if you have a nice traditional fireplace and a furnace, guess what you can no longer use? You can put a gas insert or have an electric fireplace. Good for you. Try running those electric fireplaces with the heating bills they have out there. So anyway, let's see. So they think this system must be abolished, the system that we have right now. And again, we answered this American Community Survey, all our little smart apps, all our little smart meters, they have the means by which to impose this upon us. Even if you try and go without modern electricity and want to use solar, guess what? Most of these government incentivized programs lock you to the power grid. I just mentioned this yesterday. So if you have a grid down situation, you think, no worries, I have solar. Unless you have your own batteries and are equipped to go off grid, you are still their prisoner. Going back to the article, unfortunately for the billions of beings who have benefited from the free market, from what market freedom exists, the new green socialist globalist state imagined by that author of the other article, McDuff, will undo decades of gains against grinding poverty, gains enjoyed by the world's most at-risk and poorest populations. And this is pretty typical. These utopian policies often harm those they claim, and I'm saying claim because they aren't intended to help these people. They claim to help the most. We see that in minimum wage. We see that with rent control. We've discussed this all the time. So he has a section of the article here called The Decline of Poverty and Its Effects in the Developing World. Quality of life indicators have been consistently moving upward in recent decades. That apparently is intolerable to the left. Global life expectancy is increasing, especially in the poorest parts of the world. Child mortality is going down. Malnourishment is down. Access to clean water, sanitation is increasing. Literacy is increasing. Extreme poverty is rapidly declining. Access to electricity has grown. We have yet to observe evidence that these trends will be reversed due to climate change. That's the thing, folks. They cannot say that these policies will in any way make these people's lives better. In fact, we've already had proof from these experiments that they make it worse. Look at our war on poverty and what Lyndon Baines Johnson's LBJ did with his Great Societies and what that's done to the Black communities in particular. And we know why he did it. He said so himself. We're not going to repeat that here on the air. These policies exist to benefit one group of individuals. And guess what? It ain't us. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but here's also what he continues farther down. Again, this is Mises.org wire. Climate change activist admits being green requires the end of capitalists, declaring war on rising standards of living. The effects of these climate control schemes would come down hardest on the people in the poorer parts of the world. Energy consumption is high in the rich world, but the demand for growing access to electricity, personal transportation, heating, and cooling are highest in the developing world. Access to these technologies will be increasingly important as climate change occurs. People the world over will need heating and air conditioning. They'll need water filtration technology. They'll need better insulated homes. They'll need appliances that improve sanitation and free human beings to engage in higher productivity labor. What is going to happen when we screw that up? These people are going to be the first to suffer. That's my commentary on that little bit there. But he also calls this first world chauvinism. This is why statistician Hans Rosling saw a fundamental conflict between well-meaning first world activists and ordinary people in the developing world. I take a little bit of issue with him saying these people are well-meaning, but we'll be generous. Okay, they're well-meaning. Let's move on. When speaking to environmentally conscious audiences, he noted that many in the audience insisted that no, everybody in the world cannot have cars and washing machines. For these activists, the imperative lowering energy uses simply demands it. Guess who still will have these things? Definitely the government officials imposing these draconian policies upon us. They never suffer. What about the Affordable Care Act? Were they subjected to that? Nope. Cadillac for all of them. Taking over student loans. Guess whose loans were forgiven after the Affordable Care Act was passed and they took a power grab over the student loans? The student loans of the kids of the members of Congress. But I digress. Pointing to a photo of low-income women slaving over a wash basin, Rosling asks, how can we tell this woman she isn't going to have a washing machine? It's a reminder that much of the talk over carbon taxes and climate regulations smack of first world chauvinism. The rich world already has its cars and its sewing machines. A global climate scheme would reduce the wealth of the people in the rich world, but the impact in China, India, Africa and South Africa, where most live closer to subsistence levels, would be devastating. For more environmentally minded suburban upper middle class people in North America and Europe, this is just tough luck and bad timing for everyone else. I love that he calls this out for what it really is. Any comments, Jeff?
No, nope. I'm good.
There's an article here that's related also. Recycling. Recycling is something that we feel morally obligated to do. And I never questioned it. How many of us really question recycling? It seems like a good thing. We don't want the planet to be covered. Do you remember that propaganda movie, WALL-E? Did you ever take Jason to see that one when he was little?
I don't remember that one.
Oh my goodness. It was this animation. I don't know who did it, but the whole premise was the world has been consumed by trash. And now there's a little robot named Wally who repurposes this trash, and the whole community, everybody's gone out to outer space and they're living on this big space community there. The funny thing is the people in the space community are all seen shuttled around on chairs, and they go everywhere on these little conveyor belts, and there are big TV images all around them where they're fed all their orders and propaganda and their instructions on how they're going to live. And these people have their food all put in trays in front of them, and all they do is eat and watch screens. Sound familiar? The funny thing is all of these people are morbidly obese, and they have a body mass index that is all fat, and their skeletal systems have all shrunk down. This is the ideal populace to be controlled. This is why health insurance is going to be so far out. Oh, Suzanne, you're just taking a movie. You know what? These movies reflect the mentality of the people that create them. So let's talk about recycling a little bit. The world has been consumed by trash. If we don't want to end up like if we don't want to end up with a planet like Wally's trying to clean up and be one of these fat slovenly sheep on a space space center, let's take some realistic looks here about recycling. And a while back, I was actually outside of Washington, D.C., visiting a friend, and I'm throwing away stuff after dinner. I said, "Oh, where's your recycling?" And she says, "We don't recycle." What? You don't recycle? Are you kidding me? She says, "No, it's a scam." What? I'd never even thought of this. Yeah, if you think about all these chosen companies that are given subsidies, taxpayer subsidies, they're hired by the government. It takes a lot of fossil fuels to break these things down, and I never even considered questioning the idea of recycling. Just like the kids that are being raised these days don't question the validity of climate change. Pure indoctrination. This is an article from Intellectual Takeout. America finally admits recycling doesn't work, by John Miltimore. And this came out on March 21st of this month. And what John says here is a couple years ago, after he sent his 5-year-old daughter off to school, she came home. What do I say about schools and indoctrination? She came home reciting the same cheerful environmental mantra I was taught in elementary school. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, I'm a little old. I didn't hear that in school. But what was another mantra that came out a while ago? Barack Hussein Obama. People, get your kids out of these little commie factories. Let me get back to the article. The moral virtue of recycling is rarely questioned, as I just mentioned. It has been ingrained into the American psyche over several decades. And on a recent trip to the Caribbean, he had his wife's friend exhibited nervous guilt while collecting empty soda, water, and beer bottles destined for the trash, since the resort offering no recycle bins. This is why I'm bringing this story up, because this is exactly what happened to me when I was at my friend's house. Where's your recycling bin? We don't have one. Oh my gosh. Madness. I feel terrible throwing these into the garbage, she said. Yeah. I didn't have the heart to tell her that there was a good chance the bottles she was recycling back in the States were ending up just like the ones in the Caribbean island we were visiting. As Discover magazine pointed out a decade ago, recycling is tricky business. I really wasn't paying attention a decade ago, Jeff. I really, didn't think too much about it. Let's see, there's a study he refers to, 2010 Columbia University study revealed that just 16.5% of the plastic collected in New York Department of Sanitation was recyclable. That's it. The results in nearly half of the plastics collected being landfilled. Here's the thing. If people knew that these plastic bottles they were consuming, purchasing, and just tossing out to be recycled weren't being recycled, would they continue to purchase them? So maybe people need to understand that this really is a sham, and maybe we shouldn't buy, particularly the products that are sold in these. How many people really don't need soda? I'm not here telling you. I'm not saying we should have, a tax to dissuade people from that. I think your own good health should be enough of a reason not to consume these products. Anyway, I digress. The reason for this, that the fact that a lot of this is not going to go away, he said, let's see, times have only gotten worse since this 2010 study. Over this past weekend, the New York Times ran a story detailing how hundreds of cities across the country are now abandoning recycling efforts. And the reason for this, he says, is that China, the largest buyer of U.S. recyclables, has stopped accepting them in 2008. How many people even knew this? And other countries such as Thailand and India have increased imports, but not in sufficient tonnage to alleviate the mounting costs cities are facing. We're in a crisis moment in the recycling movement right now. Fiona Ma, who's the treasurer of California, told the Times, cost is the key word. Like any activity or service, recycling is an economic activity. The dirty little secret is that the benefits of recycling have been dubious for some time. Hats off to my friend for calling this out a long time ago. Recycling has been dysfunctional for a long time, according to Mitch Hedlund, the executive director of Recycle Across America. So he puts forth this proposition here, or this question: has recycling always been an illusion? For how long? Perhaps from the very beginning. Nearly a quarter century ago, Lawrence Reed wrote about the growing fad of recycling, which state and local governments were pursuing, mostly through mandate, with a religious like fervor. There were numerous problems with the approach. If only lawmakers had heeded his advice, or that of John Tierney, who offered similar guidance. Believing there was no more room for landfills, Americans concluded that recycling was their only option. Their intentions were good and their conclusions seemed plausible. Recycling does sometimes make sense for some materials in some places at some times, but the simplest and cheapest option is usually to bury garbage in an environmentally safe landfill. And since there's no shortage of landfill space, the crisis of 1987 was a false alarm. There's no reason to make recycling legal or a moral imperative. So again, recycling efforts, he says here, backfire and create waste themselves. So look at this realistically, folks. There are much, what he concludes here is, and there are then the energy and resources that go into recycling. This is what my friend had said. How much water do Americans spend rinsing items that end up in landfill? Remember, they want these items clean before they don't recycle them. How much fuel is spent deploying fleets of barges and trucks across highways, oceans, carrying tons of garbage to be processed at facilities that belch their own emissions? The data on this front is thin and results in the environmental effectiveness of recycling very based on the material being recycled. The point of the matter is we have a false alarm that affects us all. It benefits those that are in the chain of production for dealing with recyclable material. I would suggest as an alternative, or a couple of alternatives. First, just because it's so awful for you, stop buying these sodas in those plastic containers. Get away from these products as much as you can. This includes processed foods. Be more self-reliant. Produce your own foods. Grow your own foods as much as you can. Stop eating this garbage, these processed foods that have these containers for them. Be more self-reliant. If you have something that you might consider throwing out, try to repurpose it. If you like bottled water, buy some bottled water, but you can refill those. At every gym, at the airport, they have these filtered water stations, so at least you can get a lot more use. But this religion of automatically recycling, we need to wake up on that. Any questions, Jeff?
No, like there's a bunch of states like New York and I believe California. California might have 10 cents on them, but New York has a nickel on their bottles, carbonated drinks and water. And so what they count on is that most people just aren't going to turn them in. And so it's just a tax. They've just added more money that they're collecting from people on these drinks.
Yeah.
And New York is one that's proposing a tax on soda. I mean, you know what? I don't drink soda anymore. But the fact of the matter is, I don't care if someone does. That's their own problem. It's none of the government's business to tell people what they can and can't drink.
Absolutely. I want to turn over now to the lawsuit over Catherine Steinle, Kate Steinle, we referred to her. Again, my article, The Constitutional Solution to Immigration, came about. I decided to write this after this beautiful young lady was shot in the head on a pier in San Francisco by a gentleman who was here illegally. And we have this battle of federalism here. Again, I've been very clear on what the constitutional solution to immigration is. The post-1861 Lincolnian version of America clearly would require the national government to secure our national borders, again, rendering the states irrelevant. So here what we have now, and people are celebrating because they're saying, yeah, that's one for celebrating. It's a win for federalism. This is no more a win for federalism than the case I mentioned about the Supreme Court and the cops giving about giving the finger to the cops. That was a loss for federalism, as was this case, as I will explain. Federal Appeals Court, led by a Trump appointee Monday, unanimously upheld the dismissal of a lawsuit against San Francisco for failing to alert immigration authorities of the release of the immigrant who killed Kate Steinle. The suit was brought by her parents, alleging that San Francisco was negligent for failing to comply with a request from 2015 by ICE representatives to hold jail immigrants until federal authorities could take custody. Now, as we know, California is a sanctuary state. Stupid or not, that's within their constitutional powers. Juan Francisco Lopez Sanchez, also known as Jose Zarate, shot and killed Steinle, who was 32 years old, on Pier 14. The lawsuit said in a memorandum written by 2015 by then San Francisco Sheriff Ross Mercurini, violated various laws. His memo said employees could provide information to ICE only if it was already public or if federal authorities obtained a warrant or court order, and employees first checked with the sheriff's legal counsel. So what we have is a sanctuary state, a sanctuary city, and nullification of unconstitutional federal laws. Like it or not, according to the Constitution as ratified, California has the law on their side. As does, according to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, said San Francisco violated no state, local, or federal law. Here's what they said. Our holding today makes no judgment as to whether or not the policy established by the memo was wise or prudent, says Judge Mark Bennett. That is not our job. Lopez Sanchez, who was in the country without legal authorization, again, shot Steinle 2.5 months after being released from a San Francisco jail. So in upholding the suit's dismissal, the Ninth Circuit said the sheriff had the legal right to enact his policy, even if it adversely affected ICE's ability to do his job. The tragic and unnecessary death of Steinle may well underscore the policy argument against the sheriff's decision to bar his employees from providing the release date of many-time convicted felon to ICE. But that policy argument can be acted upon only by California's state and municipal political branches of government, or perhaps by Congress, but not by federal judges applying California law. Now, for those of you thinking, wow, the Ninth Circuit actually understands federalism, this is a policy-driven outcome. Yes, this is a Trump appointee, but isn't it curious if you look at the overall pattern of the United States Court, of the Ninth District Court? They didn't care about federalism with several of California's gun laws. They overturned some of those. I believe one was for ammunition. I think one was another for the shall issue or 10-day waiting periods. The gun rights activists celebrated these holdings. The problem is that was state law. So we have some inconsistency here. Prop 8 in California, a proposition voted overwhelmingly approved by the California voters. Marriage was between a man and a woman. Well, the activists lost the popular vote. So what did they do? What they always do. They ran to the federal judiciary and the ruling was overturned. That was a state law. So what's different? Well, now one judge decides to uphold it because we're talking about immigration. So this is my issue here when we involve the federal judiciary in instances, policies that were never their job to begin with, We get inconsistent rulings. Ultimately, will this go to the Supreme Court? Who knows? But this is not a federal issue. Again, the problem is by nationalizing everything, making this one United States of America, the status of immigrants, illegal or otherwise, and the shift from the 1965 with the 1965 Immigration Act was intended to change the demographics to benefit big government. I'm not even going to say the Democrats because it benefits the Republicans too. The bigger the government gets, the happier both parties are. We have a $4 billion pig trough they're fighting for every year. Look at our debt right now. Why in the world would they want to decentralize? But going back full circle to the start of this show, what did our friend Andrew say? Decentralization, secession is the only way out of this. I don't imagine us continuing down this path. Where do you think we will be 10 years from now, 20 years from now? We're cheering on incremental losses of liberty, saying, well, that's okay. These aren't a big deal anyway. What am I referring to? The ban that went into effect yesterday. Jeff, did you want to talk about, and we do have time, we're getting inquiries from our listeners as to whether this bump stock ban qualifies as an ex post facto or bill of attainder. Do you want to review what that question was, Jeff?
Just let me go back for a second. The Ninth Circuit ruled that that sheriff was within his power to not obey the federal law, correct?
Yes. Okay, we're going to backtrack and then go back to our immigration article. Go ahead.
So here is my question on that. If these sheriffs that are up in, Oregon or Washington that are setting up sanctuary cities for guns, are they going to get the same response out of the Ninth Circuit when it's challenged because they're not enforcing the law that is passed by the state?
I'm going to bet negative, Ghost Rider.
I would bet as well. So here it is. It's a political ruling because it has nothing to do with the federal. First of all, they should have said this is a state issue. It's not none of our business. But
that's exactly
they ruled on it.
They went there and they said, yeah, this is a state issue. And this is what we need more of. We need more of them saying, no, you know what, we can't bring, or just start denying them. But so here we have, they upheld it, but for ostensibly the right reasons, but they have not abided by the system of federalism before. So again, now let's move on to the bump stocks. We have people in this country that have purchased bump stocks prior to them illegally being declared now contraband. We know that they are not machine guns. The Obama administration, probably the most anti-gun guy we know, even knew that they could not reclassify bump stocks to fit within the parameters of the unconstitutional, hence null and void, 1934 National Firearms Act, a direct result of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was a direct result of prohibition against alcohol. Do you see any of these problems not being created by an overreaching and tyrannical general government? I don't. So, are these, if you own a bump stock now and have not turned it in, are you going to be a victim of an ex post facto law? So an ex post facto law is defined as one that retroactively changes the legal consequences of acts that were committed or relationships before the enactment of the law. We're not seeing that because nobody's been punished. It changes the legal consequences of acts or relationship, meaning ownership of these guns, subsequent to the passing of this law. I am not justifying it on any way, shape, or form, but if you're going to use that as a standard, it does not apply. Interestingly enough, ex post facto laws were brought up in the 3 strikes laws in California, where if you're up before court and you're convicted of a 3rd felony after you've had 2 others, those two will result in sentencing enhancements regardless of time when they occurred, even before the enactment of the three strikes laws. The way it was justified was, no, we're not going to call this an ex post facto law. We are just merely punishing subsequent behavior because they have this history. It was a dubious classification. However, the way to go around it, we had what they called a Romero motion, meaning a motion to strike in the interest of justice. So if you have a client that is subject to 25 years for relatively minor or nonviolent offense because of priors, you could move that these took place a long time ago, had nothing to do with the crime, with the present offense, and strike in the interest of justice, thereby rendering them outside the scope of the three strikes sentencing enhancement. I hope that clarifies the matter. So Bill of Attainders now. And again, Jeff, you reminded me of the fact that these are prohibited by the states as well. So Bill of Attainders are legislative acts finding a person guilty without trial of treason or a felony and declaring himself to be attainted. This, again, nobody is being convicted just for owning these. You have to turn them in. If you don't turn them in, then you'll be subject to the process, but not just an outright conviction. Again, this is all superfluous because the ban in and of itself is completely unconstitutional. The legal challenges we are seeing are absolutely inept, but they're the best that they can do within the parameters of a system that refuses to acknowledge the true purposes of the Second Amendment. And we can thank Antonin Scalia for his definition of what the Second Amendment protects. Pretty much only your right to have a gun in your home for personal defense. It's a right, he said, that doesn't allow you to do whatever you want. It's limited, and it's so narrowly limited, it protects handguns. Again, it restricts the general government, prohibits them outright from regulating firearms at all. But the legal challenges going to this are saying, well, only Congress can do this. The president can't do this by executive order. Horse crap. Congress can't do it either. So even the challenges are off target. See what I did there, Jeff? So this is what we're looking at. We've got a population, even the lawyers. Look at my article on the Abbeville Institute, The Problem with Lawyers and the Constitution. You can go to SuzanneCSherman.com and find it there, why lawyers are the worst ones to turn to when it comes to defending the Constitution. I was one of them. That's why we refer to me here on the network as a recovering attorney. So we didn't cover all the stuff we'd planned on. We want to talk about, I think we're doing a show tomorrow. We're not doing one Friday. Tomorrow we'll be covering the Second Amendment. There's an article from AmmoLand saying Second Amendment supporters are actually winning the argument. I will take exception to that. We have some other things about let's see, personal security tomorrow, keeping your children safe. I never did get to Donald Trump's executive order regarding the EMP. So we'll get to that. I don't think I did cover that. Did I, Jeff?
Nope, didn't get to it.
Yeah, so we'll get into a little bit more prepping tomorrow. And today we're kind of heavy on the politics, light on the preparedness. But tomorrow we will get into the EMP executive order by Trump. And we have some other fun stuff. And then Friday, we will take the day off. My son's going to be getting his new race car on the track. I think I'd like to get him on the air at some point to talk about all the stuff going on out here with Utah Motorsports Campus. And the karting series was actually canceled as a result of some personality conflicts. So negotiations are starting anew. But this weekend, anybody out here in the greater Salt Lake area, check out the Utah Motorsports Campus. The Miatas, they have cars running on the big track. My son's actually taking his first real race car out on the big track for the first time. So I will be there Friday and Saturday. Shoot me a message if you're going to be there. And I know they say it's a violation of PERSEC to say where you're going to be, but you know, I'm a big girl. I can handle myself. Any thoughts to wrap this up, Jeff? Otherwise, I'll close out the show.
No, we're we're quickly heading down this Marxist road, and I don't think there's a stop for it. We just need to start preparing for what's going to happen next.
Well said. On behalf of the rest of us at the Cerberus Radio Network, I'm Suzanne Sherman. I want to thank you all for listening and sharing and tuning in. God bless you. Have a great day.